Hey, welcome back to our study called The Aftermath of Sin, and we're looking at Genesis chapter 19, verses 31 through 35 today. So let's get into this here. All right, this is not the good part of the story, but it is the necessary thing. So let's think about the daughters first. There's some good intentions, but evil follow through here. Here we begin the actual story, the actual narrative of this the story here. And we have Lot and his two daughters living in the cave. We looked at the setting last time. Now his two probably teenage daughters, since they're unmarried, they were betrothed, right, when they were in Sodom, but now that's gone. Their betrothed, their fiancés all died in Sodom. So they lost their husbands, their potential, their future husbands. And now they're living in a cave in the hills, and there's no one else around. They're just kind of hiding out in this cave. Yeah, remember, their dad's afraid. He's scared. That's why he's in the cave, and he's brought them with him in there. And they're obviously of marrying age, so, and both of them are, but they're unmarried. So they're probably young women, probably in their teens, somewhere in there, if they're not married yet. And because usually back then, you getting married pretty young, pretty early in your teens maybe, as a woman. So that's what's going on with them. Now they talk about their father. They say, well, he's an old guy, and they recognize that he's an old man, and now he's a widower. He doesn't have his wife. His wife's dead, and he has no male heir. So he has no one to pass on his line. His line's going to die with him. And they ask the question, who will carry on the family name? Who's going to carry on our father's name? And so that's a noble thing to think about. That's a good thing to think about. Who's going to carry on the legacy of our father? Who's going to be the next righteous person in our family? Who's going to carry on the family name? What's going to happen after he's gone? What will be done to preserve his honor, they're thinking. Because he's going to die an heirless person, and that's not cool. That's not honorable. So they want their dad to be honored. They want to have grandchildren for their father. This is all fine and good, right? This is a good thing to think about. It's a good thing to contemplate. A good thing to work towards. They're thinking about, I need to have children in order to. I need to have a son so that my dad can have a grandchild to pass everything on to. He doesn't have any sons, can't have any sons right now because he's not married and he's hiding in a cave. Well, maybe we can have grandkids. All good things to think about. So there's nothing wrong with wanting to, give your dad grandkids. But as they don't have any husbands, and in their estimation, there is not a man on earth that would want them, they begin to hatch a plan. Now, the reason why I kind of think this is teenage women, young women, is because the way they just jump to that extreme. It's like, what are you talking about? I understand you're living in a cave and your dad's afraid, but you think that's a permanent situation? I mean, he's already changed his mind once. You don't think he's might change it again? I don't know. Their life, I think, growing up is probably pretty, it's not very static. Things are changing. So I don't know why they jumped to this idea. Like, there's no one around on the entire earth that would marry us. Like, really? Are you sure about that? Because that seems kind of a little bit of an extreme. But that's what they do. And so then they begin to hatch this plan. It's as if they take out a page out of their Aunt Sarah's playbook, right? Go back to Sarah trying to scheme her way into getting the promise of God fulfilled. And so they try to scheme their way out of this situation too. It's like, man, this runs in the family, scheming. And we're going to see that later on too with the great-grandchildren over there after Sarah. But, it's crazy. But that's what they're doing. They're scheming. Abraham, Sarah schemed. Now Lot's daughters are scheming. Lot was a schemer too. Everyone seems to be scheming. So I guess we shouldn't be surprised. But that's what they try to do. Now, the oldest suggests that they get their father drunk and lie with him with the hopes of getting pregnant. Now, what in the world was she thinking? I have no idea. These people are not thinking. That's the problem. You begin to make bad decisions. You start thinking, going down this road. You jump to conclusions. You go off and like, wow, man, this is the worst thing that's ever happened. How are we going to get out of this? And you start scheming and start thinking. And obviously the daughters are playing off of each other. So they're playing off each other's fears and the fear of the future and all that kind of stuff. And, good intentions that they have. But guess what? It's an evil follow through. They follow through with their plan, with the apparent excess. And so then the younger sister does the same thing. Like, I don't know. There's really not much you can say about this. Is that just that people are stupid. That's what I come away with. It's like, hey, I could see people doing that today. It's not like they're unusual. I mean, some of the things you see people do, it's like, are you serious? But you make one bad decision after another. You begin to play off of your fear. You're afraid of things, and this is where it leads you to this crazy scheme, thinking that this is the answer. This is what God would want you to do, right? That's what some people do. God wants me to do this. Well, it's sin. It's evil. What are you talking about? God doesn't want you to do that. But you see, their desire was honorable, but unless that was coupled with faith in God, it led them to sin, It always does. As the saying goes, the road to hell is paved with good intentions. I mean, they had good intentions, but it wasn't coupled with faith in God, and so that just led them to hell. It just led them to sin and depravity. It's horrible. I mean, look at what they did to their father. Horrible. They're trying to honor him, but then their scheme was dishonoring to him. Made him a fool. Like, what are you thinking? Let's honor our father by just completely destroying him. Let's honor our father by completely dishonoring him. And then making him, just destroy his dignity, man. It's like you just robbed him of all the dignity that this man had. And just ground it in the dust and then spit on it and lit it on fire. And they say, we're going to honor our father. Really? What? I don't know. There's so much you can say about it. It's crazy. But I think it has a lot to do with emotions, too. I mean, they're emotional people. They're emotional young women, not really thinking straight. But that's the problem. If you're allowing emotions and not faith to rule, you got problems. Sin was crouching at the door, at Lot's door, and he invited it in. Lot invited the sin in, right? He's not an innocent bystander in all that happened. His fear, his loss of everything he owned, the death of his wife, his self-isolation, which is really, I mean, that kind of does make sense because the dude is probably depressed, right? The guy's probably depressed. He just lost his wife, lost everything, lost all of his wealth in Sodom as it burned to the ground. Lost his potential sons-in-law so that he could, possibly pass his name on to them through the grandchildren that would come of those. And those are gone. So there's a lot of loss there. So, I mean, I understand he's going through a lot. He's grieving, right? He should be. But all that, he allowed that to open the door for sin. He is like, use that, his emotional state probably. It doesn't specifically tell us that he's being emotional, but I don't know how you cannot be. He's human. And so, but he didn't stop those emotions from allowing him to enter into the sin. He opened the door for that. He's like, I can't take this, So he opens the door for that problem. He's not going to faith in God. He turns from God, really, and goes with his fear. Peter tells us that while Lot was living in Sodom, he was greatly distressed by the sensual conduct of the wicked and was tormenting his righteous soul over the lawless deeds that he saw and heard. And now what? Take heed lest ye fall, right? He was living in Sodom, which doesn't make any sense to me, but he's able to be there and still be just like, oh man, I can't believe all these people are doing this stuff. And he just kept on, he lived amongst the people of sin, but then wasn't affected by the sin while he was there. He was still a righteous man. But then now, what happens? Take heed lest ye fall. He allows his daughters to get him drunk. That was him He allowed them to do that. He did it 2 nights in a row. Like, it wasn't just one night of sin, it was 2 nights of sin. I mean, he got so stinking drunk that he doesn't even know what's going on, it says. In 2 nights, he has undone all that he was able to keep himself from in the years of Sodom. That was it. 2 nights, boom. All that righteous, distress of his soul was undone. For what? For him, it was this drunkenness. So not only does he defile himself, but he also defiles his daughters. There's some warnings here, I think. There's some big warnings. First, there's a warning against drunkenness. I mean, it's clear here that this was the gateway sin to greater sin for Lot. It was his drunkenness. If he would have kept himself from drinking, no problems, right? But it was the drunkenness. That temptation to get drunk, to kind of, feel good after all that's happened, led to more sin. As Matthew Henry said, no mountain on this side, the holy hill above, can set you out of the reach of Satan's fiery darts. Okay? Yeah. What is he saying there? You can't hide from Satan and his temptations. You can't do it. No matter what you do, you can't hide in a mountain, you can't hide in a cave, and not have Satan come find you there and be like, hey, guess what? How about you try this? That's what happened. There's a second warning, and that's to parents, I think. You can take your daughters out of Sodom, but you can't take the Sodom out of your daughters. He raised his girls in a city where his heart was tormented. The dude's heart was tormented all the time. Right, guys? He's tormented from what's going on, everything he saw and heard. But that's where he has his daughters growing up. Hello? You don't think it's going to have some kind of negative results on your daughters? You need to get out of there. He should have left. He should have went back to, just leave all the stuff behind. Just take his family and move back with Uncle Abraham and Sarah. Because that would have been a whole bunch better. Yet he stays in Sodom. And, go anywhere else, man. But you're staying there. You're distressed every day, it says, because of the sin around you. And that's where you have your daughters growing up. And I think it impacted them. The Sodom was in the girls. They might have left Sodom, but the Sodom didn't leave them. So that's a problem. Well, there's some warnings there. Like, you can't, first of all, you can't put yourself in a bubble and not have temptation come. That's the thing for parents too. Like, you cannot protect your child from the temptation of evil, though, either. No matter what you do, you can't isolate them from temptation to evil. You can put them in the bubble, but what happens, a lot of these kids, you've seen it before. As children get older, the parents kind of clamp down. They're trying to prevent them from doing bad stuff, trying to prevent them from evil. And what happens? The child, as soon as they get old enough, they're gone. They just abandon everything. Why? Why does it happen? Because you can't shield them from Satan's temptation. You can't do it. You can teach them about it, and that's what a lot of parents fail to do. It's like even talking about what's going on here in this story with your children. Here, this is a crazy story, but here, let me tell you about this, because this is where they were distracted. They acted on emotion, on fear, and we can't do that. And there's some real evil out there. This is an evil act that you should never consider. No one should ever consider it. And actually, it was evil, even in the culture, it was evil, which says something. But yet, this is what they did. Why? So you need to explain those things. You got to explore those things with our children, with our young children, so that the temptation isn't there. It's not like, ooh, I'm tempted. Because one of the greatest temptations that Satan has for us is that you've never experienced this. It's a good thing. You should try it. That's where he often gets us. Like, hey, this is good. And actually, it's a horrible evil. So, good intentions with the daughters, but they had a horrible, evil follow-through with it. And then Lot just opened the door for the sin. Sin was sitting there crouching at the door, barking. Bah, 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 bah. He just opens the door, and in comes sin and just tears them up. That's what happens. So, next time we'll take a look at verses 36 through 38, kind of finish off looking at this passage.